I want you to imagine something you probably do almost every single day. You're driving down the highway, right? You check your passenger side mirror to change lanes, and there it is.
Oh, yeah, that little etched warning text.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Objects in mirror are closer than they appear. Or, picture walking into a convenience store and just glancing up at that big, bulging, dome-like mirror tucked up in the corner of the ceiling.
We interact with these objects constantly, just basically on autopilot.
Right. But we rarely stop to think about the optical wizardry that makes them work. So today, we are taking a deep dive into the physics of curved mirrors. We're using a massive compilation of optical science and history, mostly centering on a really detailed Wikipedia article on curved mirrors.
It's a great source. It really breaks down how simply bending a piece of glass, it fundamentally alters reality.
It really does. And our mission today is to figure out exactly how that works, taking you from, 15th century luxury art all the way to massive spacefaring reflecting telescopes.
Because honestly, we treat them just like regular pieces of glass, but a flat mirror just bounces light straight back at you. Bending that surface, even by a millimeter, it turns a passive reflection into an active manipulation of the world around us.
We're basically taking the light entering our environment and forcing it to obey specific geometric rules, which, when I first think of curved mirrors, my mind immediately goes to the carnival, funhouse mirrors.
Oh, sure. The ones that give you tiny little legs and a giant wobbly head.
Yeah, exactly. But outside of that entertainment setting, these distortions aren't random at all. A funhouse mirror alternates between different curves to just create chaos.
Right. But isolating a single, uniform curve, that creates something incredibly precise. Let's look at the shape that bulges outward toward you first.
Okay, so like looking at the back of a spoon.
Exactly. In physics, we measure the angle of light hitting a surface against an imaginary line called the normal. And that line just points straight out from the glass at a perfect 90-degree angle.
So every point on the glass has its own normal line.
Right. And because the surface of an outward bulging mirror curves away from the center, every single point on that glass has a normal line pointing in a slightly different direction.
So the normal lines are basically fanning outward, like the quills of a porcupine.
That's a great way to picture it, and that outward fan is the defining mechanism here. When a beam of perfectly parallel light rays, say from the sun, hits that bulging surface, the light reflects off those varying angles and just spreads out in every direction.
It diverges.
Exactly, they're diverging mirrors. This outward scattering means the mirror can never physically focus light into a single concentrated point in front of the glass.
Which leads to what I thought was a wildly counterintuitive concept in our source material. The text states that these outward bulging convex mirrors always form a, quote, virtual, diminished, and upright image.
Right, those are the three key terms.
I get that diminished means smaller, and upright means, you aren't flipped upside down. But virtual is the part that kind of breaks my brain. The focal point is described as an imaginary point inside the solid wall behind the mirror.
Yeah, this is where we really have to confront how our brains interpret reality, because those light rays bounce off the mirror and scatter outward. They never actually meet in physical space.
But I can see the image.
You can, because your physical eye catches a few of those scattered rays. In your brain, it functions as this automatic, highly efficient geometry engine. It just naturally assumes light always travels in straight lines.
Oh, wow. So it's tricking itself.
Basically, yeah. It takes those diverging rays hitting your retina and mentally traces them backward. It draws imaginary straight lines through the solid glass, through the wall behind it, until they intersect at a fake, virtual focal point.
Wait, I really want to make sure I understand the gravity of this. If the focal point is imaginary and the image is technically forming inside the mirror where light physically cannot go.
Right, no light is back there.
Then I'm not actually looking at a reflection of light the way I think I am. Like, if I put a piece of paper in front of that mirror, I'm not going to catch a projection of the image, am I?
Not at all. Nothing happens to the paper. Think about a movie projector. A projector takes light, runs it through a lens, and forces it to converge onto a physical screen.
Right. The light physically hits the fabric.
Exactly. The light rays physically meet on the screen. That is what we call a real image. But with our outward bulging mirror, the light is just scattering uselessly into the room.
It's just bouncing everywhere.
Right. The image you see only exists as a coherent picture once the lenses inside your own physical eyeballs catch that scattered light and refocus it onto your retina. Your brain is literally rendering a 3D environment inside a solid wall where no light actually exists.
That is wild. The mirror's just feeding your eyes a mathematical trick.
Yeah.
It's like visually packing an entire room into a tiny box.
That's exactly what it's doing.
You can see everything, but it all has to shrink to fit into your brain's geometric simulation. And that shrinking effect is the entire reason for that warning on car mirrors, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. We aren't looking for perfect scale when we're driving. We are buying situational awareness. You need a wider field of view to eliminate the blind spot.
So the unchangeable trade-off for cramming a wide angle into a small piece of glass is that the cars behind you have to look artificially small.
Right. And your brain, which relies on size to judge distance, naturally misinterprets those tiny cars as being much further away than they actually are.
Which is why we use them for surveillance everywhere.
Yeah.
The hallway safety mirrors in hospitals or schools where the corridors intersect, or those little convex domes strapped to ATMs or computer monitors.
They make everything seem smaller, but they cover a massive area.
Yeah. And the history of how humanity figured this out is genuinely fascinating. The source material brings up this thing called the, well, pardon my French, the oeil de sorcière.
Yes, the sorcerer's eye. It's such a great historical detail.
According to the sources, back in the 15th century, casting a perfectly flat piece of glass was incredibly difficult. The metallurgy and glass-making technology just wasn't there to float large, perfectly even sheets.
It was almost impossible. But blowing glass into a hollow sphere, that was standard everyday practice for a glass blower.
So they just cut a piece out.
Exactly. A glass blower simply cuts a section out of that hollow sphere, applies a metallic backing, and naturally you have a perfectly uniform outward bulging mirror.
So a manufacturing limitation birthed an entirely new way of perceiving a room. That's incredible.
And they became hugely popular in art and interior design. They were often called banker's eyes.
Right, because a merchant could hang one up and keep an eye on their entire shop without turning their head. Literally early 15th century security cameras.
Exactly. And you see this most famously in art from that period.
Like Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini portrait from 1434. It's his famous painting of a wealthy merchant and his wife standing in a room. But on the back wall, Van Eyck painted a tiny, incredibly detailed oeil de sorcière.
It is an absolute masterpiece of perspective.
Yeah, and if you look closely at that painted mirror, it reflects the entire room, the backs of the couple, and even two tiny figures standing in the doorway who are completely invisible in the main painting.
It was a massive flex of artistic mastery. He was showing off this luxurious, reality-bending object.
The painter is using the physics of light to reveal a hidden world to the viewer. I just love that. It proves how deeply humans have always been captivated by our ability to manipulate perspective.
Absolutely. So bulging the glass outward scatters the light to give us the big picture.
Right. But what if our goal isn't to see a wide area, but to see something far away in extreme detail? The source explains that if we take that same curve and cave it inward, away from the light source, the entire rulebook changes.
It completely flips. We move from scattering light to collecting it. Because the surface caves in like the bowl of a spoon, all those normal lines we talked about are now pointing slightly inward toward each other.
Okay, so they're converging.
Yes. They collect the incoming parallel rays of light and force them to intersect at a single, highly concentrated physical point in space right in front of the mirror.
And because they gather and focus light, the everyday uses flip completely, right? Like you aren't putting an inward caving mirror in a hallway intersection.
No, that would be terrible for surveillance. You use them in reflecting telescopes to gather faint starlight, or in flashlights and car headlamps.
Oh, right. Because you put a small bulb exactly at that focal point, and the mirror takes all that chaotic light and throws it outward in a powerful unified beam.
Exactly. And you also find them right in your bathroom. A magnified makeup mirror, a shaving mirror, or even that tiny little angled mirror your dentist uses to look at the back of your teeth.
So these rely on the mirror's ability to magnify objects placed very close to them. The source material goes really deep into how these inward caving or concave mirrors behave, and reading it, it feels like trying to track an optical illusion.
It really does. The image you see is entirely dependent on your physical distance from the mirror's focal point. It requires some spatial imagination, but the mechanism is beautifully consistent.
The text used this great analogy. Think of the light rays crossing in front of the mirror in the shape of an hourglass.
Yes, the hourglass.
The wide base of the hourglass is at the glass surface, and the narrow pinch in the middle is the focal point where all the light intersects. Let's walk through that. Say I am standing very close to my shaving mirror.
Okay, so you are standing between the glass and that pinch of the hourglass. Because you haven't reached the point where the light rays cross, your reflection acts somewhat normally, but stretched.
Right. I see a virtual, upright, and highly magnified image. My face is huge and right side up.
Exactly. But then you start backing up. You take a step back and move your face past that focal point, right through the pinch of the hourglass.
And as soon as I cross that threshold, everything flips.
Violently. The light rays bouncing off the top of your head hit the top of the mirror's inward curve and are directed downward. The rays from your chin hit the bottom of the curve and are directed upward.
So because I've moved past the pinch, those rays have crossed over each other before they reach my eye. My brain receives the chin light from the top and the hair light from the bottom.
Yes, so the image is now a real image, but it's completely upside down. You're huge, but you're hanging from the ceiling.
That is so strange. And if I keep backing up, moving way past the mirror, the image stays upside down, but it shrinks down to a tiny, reduced version of me.
It's a total spatial dance.
It really is. Depending on where I stand, I'm huge and normal. Huge and inverted, or tiny and inverted.
And remember, the mirror is completely passive. It's just your physical position within the geometric grid of crossing light that dictates your reality.
Okay, but look at this bizarre mathematical anomaly right in the middle of that spatial dance. The source material talks about what happens if I stand exactly at the pinch of the hourglass.
Ah, the exact focal point.
Right. The text says, quote, reflected rays are parallel and never meet, so no image is formed. What does that actually mean for me, the observer? Like, do I disappear?
Well, you wouldn't disappear. But you are standing at the exact nexus where the mirror is trying to concentrate all incoming parallel light. Because of the geometry, if an object emits light outward from that exact spot, the mirror catches those rays and reflects them perfectly straight out.
Perfectly parallel to each other, like a laser beam.
Exactly. And because those rays are perfectly parallel, they never converge into an image in front of the mirror, and they never diverge for your brain to trace backward behind the mirror.
They just shoot out into infinity side by side. So what do I actually see?
You wouldn't see a reflection of your face at all. You would just see a completely unfocused wash of color and light filling the entire mirror.
Wow.
The math literally breaks down into a blur because the distance to the image is technically infinite. There are no crossing lines for your eye to resolve into a picture.
That is wild. Now, if these mirrors are so incredibly sensitive to distance, having to be at exact focal points to work, the manufacturing must be flawlessly perfect, right?
You would think so.
But the source material admits something genuinely surprising. Most curved mirrors are basically just slices of a perfect sphere because they're the cheapest to mass produce. But a perfect sphere is fundamentally flawed.
Yes. Historically, the easiest way to make a curved lens or mirror was to take two pieces of glass, put some abrasive sand between them, and just grind them together in random circular motions.
Just grinding it out by hand.
Right. The natural physics of that friction grinds them into perfect mating spherical surfaces. It's an elegant, easy manufacturing process. The catch is a phenomenon called spherical aberration.
Let's break down spherical aberration because the text spends a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
If I take a wide beam of perfectly parallel light, say, from a distant star and bounce it off a perfectly spherical mirror, it doesn't actually focus to one single crisp point at the pinch of our hourglass.
It doesn't. And that's because the curve of a perfect sphere is actually too steep at its extreme outer edges.
Oh, I see.
The light hitting the dead center of the mirror focuses where it's supposed to. But the light hitting the very edge of the mirror bounces off that overly steep curve and focuses slightly closer to the glass.
So you end up with multiple focal points smeared along a line instead of one crisp intersection, which means your image is always going to be a little bit blurry.
Exactly. The light refuses to agree on a single meeting place.
But for my bathroom makeup mirror, I mean, I'm probably never going to notice that blur, right?
No, you'll never notice it in your bathroom. But spherical aberration becomes a catastrophic issue when you are dealing with massive scale and extreme precision. Think about the Hubble Space Telescope.
Oh, right. The famous Hubble flaw. The source mentions this. When it launched in 1990, the primary mirror was ground to the wrong shape by just a fraction of a hair's width.
A tiny, tiny fraction.
It was a perfectly smooth mirror, but the edges were just slightly too flat, causing massive spherical aberration. The first images sent back of distant galaxies were terribly blurry.
It was a huge embarrassment for NASA at the time.
They essentially had to send astronauts up there on a space shuttle to install corrective optics.
Yeah.
Like Basically putting a pair of wildly expensive glasses on the telescope to artificially bend the light before it hit the sensors to counteract the flaw.
It's the ultimate example of what happens when the math doesn't perfectly match the physical world. To permanently fix spherical aberration for distant objects, engineers just have to abandon the sphere entirely.
Wait, if a sphere is naturally flawed because the edges are too steep, you'd have to physically flatten the extreme outer edges of the glass to nudge those rogue light rays back to the correct focal point, right?
Right.
But doing that by hand, fighting the natural grinding process, that sounds like a complete manufacturing nightmare.
Oh, it is a nightmare, but absolutely necessary. That flattened shape is a parabola. Parabolic reflectors ensure that every single incoming parallel ray, whether it hits the center or the far edge, bounces back to one exact pinpoint focus.
And the text also briefly mentions toroidal reflectors, right, for asymmetric needs.
Yes, toroidal reflectors curve differently depending on the angle. Think of the surface of a donut. It gives you different focal distances in different directions.
So we're taking abstract geometry and physically forcing glass to obey it. The text discusses the math that predicts all this. And, without reading the Gaussian mirror equations aloud, it describes it as this beautiful balancing act.
It really is. It treats the mirror's focal length as an absolute constant. Think of it like a cosmic seesaw.
Okay, I like that.
The mirror's focal length, that pinch in the hourglass, is the fulcrum of the seesaw. It's physically ground into the glass. It cannot move.
So if I step closer to the mirror, changing my distance as the object, the distance where my image forms has to slide in the opposite direction along the seesaw to keep the math perfectly balanced.
The universe demands balance, and the magnification formulas tell us the physical reality of that balance. Like when the math spits out a negative number for your image distance, it isn't an error code.
It is the universe translating an equation into a physical orientation. Negative simply means upside down.
Exactly. And if you hate math, the source points out you don't even need equations. You can solve these problems with a ruler and a pencil using something called ray tracing.
Oh yeah, the graphical method.
Yeah.
You physically draw a line from the top of your object to the mirror, bounce it through the focal point, and then draw another line parallel to the ground.
Yep. And where your pencil lines cross on the paper is exactly where the optical image will hover in the real world.
It is remarkably satisfying. You are literally plotting the path of photons with graphite.
It's elegant, but there's one final detail in the text that caught my eye regarding all this math.
Oh, the paraxial approximation.
Yes. It mentions that all this mathematical treatment is usually done under the paraxial approximation, which basically means treating a cheap spherical mirror as if it were a perfectly engineered parabolic one.
That really stood out to me too. Why does physics, which is so obsessed with precision, just accept a mathematical compromise? Like, good enough.
Well, paraxial means close to the axis. It's an assumption in the math that you are only dealing with light rays that hit the mirror very close to its dead center.
Because the center of a spherical mirror is relatively flat.
Right.
Right? So spherical aberration hasn't ruined the focus yet.
Exactly. Engineering is almost always a compromise between mathematical perfection and manufacturing reality.
It's physics saying, look, as long as we don't look too closely at the messy edges, the simple math is close enough. I mean, you don't need a perfectly calibrated Hubble-level parabolic mirror just to check your blind spot on the highway.
No, you don't. Reality is messy, and our models of it often have to build in a little bit of tolerance just to be useful for everyday life.
And that brings us perfectly back to where we started. I mean, the next time you are driving and you flick your eyes over to that passenger side mirror to change lanes, or you pull out a magnified shaving mirror in the morning, remember what you are actually holding.
It's not just a piece of glass.
No, you are relying on a precise, geometric manipulation of light. You are looking at a cosmic seesaw actively balancing itself in real time. You are literally looking at math in action.
It completely changes how you view a simple reflection, doesn't it?
It really does. And I want to leave you, listening at home, with one final thought to mull over. Think back to that concept of the virtual image in the convenience store security mirror.
The one inside the wall.
Yeah. When you look into that dome, you are seeing a perfectly scaled miniature world that appears to exist entirely behind the glass. But light cannot travel through that solid silver backing.
That focal point does not exist.
Exactly. The mirror isn't creating the image inside the wall. Your brain is. Your brain is catching a chaotic scatter of diverging light rays, running complex geometric ray tracing backward through solid matter, and painting a cohesive 3D picture of a world that isn't actually there, just so you can make sense of your surroundings.
It's a powerful reminder of how much of the world is constructed in our own heads. The mirror bends the light, but it's your mind that builds the reality.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of optics, history, and perception. It's been an absolute blast taking this deep dive with you today. Keep questioning what you see.